The ink on the leadership training manual still smelled new when Sloan Redmond walked into my office, heels clicking like applause on the tile, clutching a notebook she didn't even know how to use yet, and smiled like we were equals. Like she hadn't just been handed the job I'd worked 12 years to earn. "You've built such an amazing team, Evelyn," she said brightly, as if I hadn't spent half my adult life cleaning up the messes her father refused to see. I blinked, nodded, handed her the folder I'd spent all weekend preparing, and said, "Nothing. Not then." But inside, a door slammed shut, and I knew everything was about to change. Before we dive deeper, tell me this. Have you ever been passed over by someone who didn't earn it, but got everything handed to them anyway? Drop a comment with where you're watching from, and let me know. Have you ever felt invisible, even when you were holding everything together? And if it's your first time here, welcome. We share stories that expose the hidden sacrifices people like Evelyn make every day, and how, eventually, they rise. If that speaks to you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. It was supposed to be a celebration. The email said Redmond Holdings, Q1 all staff, recognition and leadership announcement, and Gerald had even asked me what type of pastries the team preferred for Friday morning. So I thought, maybe, finally, maybe this time the years of extra hours, early mornings, crisis-saving weekends, and my daughter Maddie learning to microwave dinner for herself since she was 10. Maybe it would all be seen. I wore my navy blazer, the one with the tiny stitched initials for my mother sewn behind the lapel, and Maddie gave me a double thumbs up at the door. "Go get what's yours, Mom." I arrived early, of course, set up the display boards for our upcoming logistics proposal, checked the AV, even though that wasn't my job. I made sure Gerald had his favorite lemon water, the one I'd been keeping stocked in the fridge since he started his pre-diabetic diet last fall. But the moment I walked into the conference room and saw Sloan, perfect makeup, new Louboutin pumps, 0 folders in hand, I felt it in my gut like a chill under the skin. She hugged me like we were sorority sisters and whispered, "Dad told me how much you've helped me prep. So grateful." Prep for what? That's when Gerald raised his hand and called the room to attention. "We believe in legacy here," he said, standing tall in his tailored charcoal suit, "and leadership that drives innovation. I'm proud to welcome our new Director of Strategic Accounts, my daughter, Sloan Redmond." The clapping started immediately, but I was still trying to make the words make sense. Sloan, Director. My brain stalled like a car in winter. She had started 8 weeks ago. 8 weeks. I had onboarded her, trained her on the systems, smoothed over her mistakes with clients, covered for her last-minute cancellations. And now, I was expected to clap for her? I brought my hands together slowly, and I swear I heard the echo of my own heartbreak in that hollow applause. Gerald's eyes flicked toward me just once. He didn't smile, just looked and looked away. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't an oversight. This was the plan all along. A legacy, a lesson, a line drawn between those born into power and those who built it brick by brick. I didn't know it yet, but That was the day I stopped being the backbone of someone else's success and started becoming the architect of my own. What they didn't count on was that the quiet ones, the ones who never make a scene, are the ones who burn the longest when they're lit. The rest of that morning played out like a slow-motion car crash I couldn't look away from. While the rest of the team mingled over croissants and sparkling cider, I stood near the whiteboard I'd set up for the quarterly numbers, pretending to rearrange markers no one would use. Gerald did his rounds, handshakes, and back pats, posing for photos with Sloane as if she'd just earned her MBA through battlefield promotions. Someone from HR came up and asked if I'd mind sharing a few tips with Sloane about managing the Brighton Tools account, the one I'd personally rebuilt from the ashes 2 years ago after their supply chain collapsed during the snowstorm. I nodded, because that's what I do. Nod, smile, deliver. But inside, something was splintering, and no one, not Gerald, not Sloane, not Connor from business ops who refused to meet my eye, seemed to notice. At noon, I retreated to the small break room, hoping to find 5 minutes to collect myself. Instead, I found Sloane already there, heating up a salad she had no intention of finishing, scrolling through her phone. "Oh, hey," she chirped, as if we were just two co-workers sharing a coffee, not a master, and her discarded shadow. I was telling Dad we should totally redo the onboarding process, like make it less paper heavy, you know? I'm gonna propose a digital solution by next week. I stared at her for a second too long. "You mean the system we launched in Q4? She blinked. "Huh? The one I rolled out, with the automated trackers and cloud sync?" "Oh, right," she said, waving a hand. "Well, I was thinking we could rename it. Redmond Pathway or something more branded." I didn't reply. What was there to say? I poured myself coffee I wouldn't drink and left without another word. But the real punch didn't come until the following Tuesday, when my colleague Sam, a gentle, awkward analyst who always brought extra gum to meetings, accidentally let it slip during a budget review. We were going over client handoff sheets when he glanced over and said, "Oh, I thought Sloane already had this. Didn't you prep her for it last month?" I paused. "Excuse me?" "I thought Gerald had told you," Sam mumbled, eyes widening. "He said you were helping onboard her because she was transitioning into a permanent leadership role." I figured. "You knew." I didn't speak. I just closed the folder in front of me and nodded. But my ears were ringing. I hadn't known. They'd told me Sloane was shadowing to learn the structure. They said she'd be helping out until we got through Q1. Every training meeting, every email I walked her through, every after-hours call I answered. It had all been a setup. I wasn't mentoring a new associate. I was unknowingly paving the road for my own replacement. My body felt cold, like someone had cracked a window I couldn't find. That night, I sat at the dining table while Maddie reheated leftovers, her voice floating in from the kitchen. "So, how'd it go with the new director today?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of milk. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. How do you tell your daughter that your dreams were handed to someone else because of their last name? That you'd spent 12 years building something that could be taken in a handshake and a press release? That you were supposed to smile through it all because otherwise you'd be labeled bitter, ungrateful, insubordinate? "Mom?" she called again, stepping into the room. I looked up. "Fine," I said. It was fine. But my voice cracked on the word, and Maddie's face changed. "What happened?" I shook my head. Nothing, just tired. She pulled out the chair across from me and sat without touching her food. You're not fine, she said softly. You've had that look since Friday. Is this about the job? I couldn't hold it in anymore. They gave it to her, Maddie, the one they said I was getting. After all this time, all this work, they gave it to Sloan. Maddie blinked slowly, trying to process it. But she doesn't even know what half those clients need. You've been doing everything. Exactly, I whispered. And I helped her learn it all. I trained her, thinking she was just new. Maddie's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen. That's not right. No, I said. It's not. The next morning, I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, tracing the faint lines near my eyes. The exhaustion that had settled into my skin over the years. I thought about every holiday I'd worked late, every birthday I missed a dinner for, every time I told Maddie, just give me a minute, I'm on a call. And what did I get? A seat in the back of the room and a request to clap louder. But here's the thing. They mistook my silence for acceptance, my steadiness for stagnation. What Gerald, Sloan, and all their cronies didn't understand is that the people who hold everything together are also the ones most capable of walking away and letting it all fall apart. They just have to realize their own power. And sitting there, hands shaking over a stale cup of coffee, I realized something. I was done being the fallback, the utility player, the quiet yes woman who could be bent into any role but never rise. Something inside me shifted that day, not explosively, not loudly, but like a glacier cracking beneath the surface. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had something else. I had clarity. That night, after Maddie had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the lights dimmed low and my laptop open in front of me. The screen glowed cold against my face as I stared at a blank email draft addressed to myself. The subject line read, "Remember who you are." It felt silly at first, typing it out. But then I started writing. Not a resignation letter, not yet, but a download of everything I had done over the last decade. Every account I'd saved, every proposal I'd written alone when the team fell short. Every Friday night I spent at my desk instead of at Maddie's school events. Line after line of invisible labor, now made visible. I wrote until my fingers cramped. Then I saved the file to a hidden folder and labeled it Legacy Ledger. Because if Redmond Holdings wanted to pretend I was replaceable, I needed to prove otherwise. Not to them, but to myself. The next morning, I pulled into the office parking lot 15 minutes earlier than usual. Not to impress anyone this time, but to print off a series of key documents I'd long kept filed digitally under client retention reports, strategic models, and quarterly conversion rates. All systems I'd built from scratch, but had never been publicly credited for. I made copies, encrypted them, and emailed the originals to my personal account. Not because I planned to weaponize them, but because I knew better than to leave my legacy in someone else's hands. At lunch, I slipped out quietly and drove to a tiny coffee shop 2 exits over. The kind of place no one from Redmond Holdings would be caught dead in. That's where I messaged Tina Walsh, my old mentor from years ago who now ran operations at Haven Logistics, one of our fiercest competitors, and, ironically, one of the few people who ever made me feel seen. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 4 years. I stared at the message draft for a full 5 minutes before finally hitting send. Hi, Tina. This may be unexpected, but I'd really love to catch up. I've got some updates I think you'll find interesting. Free for coffee soon? She replied in under 5 minutes. Thought you'd never ask. Friday, my treat. When I got home that evening, Maddie was already on the couch, textbooks scattered around her and earbuds in. I collapsed into the armchair across from her. She pulled one butt out and asked, "You okay?" "I'm starting to be," I said. "You know how we've talked about not letting people write your story for you?" She nodded slowly. "Well, I think it's time I pick up my own pen." The rest of the week moved differently. Not slower, but clearer. I still did my job, still responded to emails, still trained Sloan. But now, every moment felt like gathering evidence. When she forgot to respond to a client for 3 days, I handled the fallout and took notes. When she asked me to rewrite her Q2 goals because she wasn't good with spreadsheets, I did it and added the file to my ledger. I wasn't helping anymore. I was watching, measuring, building something I hadn't realized I'd need until now. A roadmap out. Friday came quickly. I took a personal day and drove to South and Bean, a quiet cafe with old brick walls and mismatched chairs. Tina was already seated when I arrived, wearing her signature black blazer and red lipstick, looking like she ran an empire, which she basically did. The second she saw me, she stood and hugged me tighter than expected. "It's about time," she said. "You've stayed too small for too long." I laughed softly, but my throat caught. "You have no idea." Over the next hour, I told her everything. How I'd been sidelined, replaced, misled. I didn't sugarcoat it, but I didn't dramatize it either. Just the facts, just the truth. Tina listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Tell me what you want." I blinked. "I'm not even sure yet." "Well, let me help you clarify," she said, pulling out her tablet. "We have an opening. Director of Regional Accounts. It's bigger than your current role and, frankly, bigger than what they gave that girl. But I need to know you're serious." I felt my pulse in my ears. What would it involve? Leading 3 client divisions, mentoring 2 new team leads, strategy, problem solving, everything you already do, but with your name on it this time. I sat there, stunned. I'd come to vent, maybe to plant seeds. I hadn't expected an offer. Or, at least, not yet. "Why me?" I asked quietly. Tina smiled. "Because I've been watching, and because every single client of yours that we've competed for. They remember your name, Evelyn, not your company's, yours." I left the cafe feeling lighter than I had in months. I didn't say yes, not yet. But I knew something now. My value had always been there. It just wasn't being honored in the right place. That night, I added something new to my legacy ledger file. A heading in bold, not just survival, strategy. And underneath it, one line, plan in motion. The shift didn't happen overnight, but they noticed. People like Gerald always notice when someone starts standing taller, even if you haven't said a word. By the following Monday, I felt it. The undercurrent of tension, like static before a storm. Connor, my direct supervisor, had always been quietly dismissive, the kind of manager who let you drown as long as you didn't make noise doing it. But now, he was suddenly engaged. Too engaged. "Hey, Evelyn," he said casually, leaning on my office door frame with his signature plastic smile. Heard you've been meeting with clients directly. Just want to make sure we're aligned on protocol." "You mean the clients I've managed for years?" I said, not looking up from my screen. He chuckled. "Of course. Just keep me in the loop going forward, all right?" His voice was soft, but the meaning was loud and clear. "Stay in your lane. Don't get too comfortable. We're watching." Later that afternoon, Sloan stopped by my desk, unannounced, holding a printout of the Q2 forecast I'd revised the week before. "Hey, quick thing," she said, fluttering the pages like they offended her. "Dad thinks this should be more optimistic. Can you pad the projections a little?" "Pad them?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. "Yeah, make it shine for the board. Doesn't have to be exact, just inspiring." "The numbers are accurate," I said. "They reflect actual client commitments and trend lines." She blinked, then forced a laugh. "God, you're so literal. I love that about you. Can you just tweak it? Pretty please?" She tapped the paper and walked off without waiting for an answer. It was the same old script. Ask me to do the dirty work, then act like I was the problem when the results didn't sparkle. By Wednesday, the walls felt like they were pressing in. At our leadership sync, Gerald spoke in riddles about team cohesion and how some people forget the meaning of loyalty. He didn't name me, but his eyes flicked my way when he said it, and that was enough. Marco, my closest work friend, my sounding board for the past 4 years, pulled me aside after the meeting. "Ev, be careful," he said, quietly, eyes scanning the hallway. "They're paranoid. Rumors are flying that you're interviewing somewhere else. Gerald's been asking about your LinkedIn activity." I stared at him. "You told them?" "Of course not, but people talk. You've changed lately. You're more, I don't know, focused, like you've got an exit map." I gave a tired smile. "Maybe I do." Marco hesitated, then looked down. "I'm sorry. I can't be seen in your office so much anymore. They're tracking who's loyal." And with that, he walked away. I don't blame him, not really. But it stung. At home, things were shifting too. Maddie had been quiet for days, picking at her food, distracted during our usual movie nights. On Thursday night, she finally sat me down. "Mom, I didn't want to tell you, but I think I need to defer from Vanderbilt." The words hit like a slap. "What? Why? You worked so hard for that." "They pulled part of my scholarship. Something about budget restructuring. That leaves a huge gap. And I know we don't have it right now." I stared at her. "We'll figure it out. That's not your burden." "Maybe not," she said, voice cracking, "but it's still real." I wanted to cry, not for the money, but for the weight I'd put on her shoulders without even realizing it. My daughter had grown up watching me compromise and contort myself just to stay afloat, and now she was preparing to do the same. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the dark living room with the TV off and the silence pressing in. I thought about the path I was on, how each step toward freedom seemed to cost me another piece of comfort, of stability, of safety. I thought about Tina's offer and how I hadn't said yes yet, partly because I was scared. Scared of failing, scared of walking into something new with nothing but my own name. But then I remembered something my grandmother used to say. Cages don't always come with bars. Sometimes they come with benefits. And wasn't that exactly what I'd been clinging to? A title without power, a paycheck without peace, a life lived on someone else's terms. On Friday morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I left my phone on the kitchen counter, drove Maddie to school, parked in the visitor lot, and walked her inside. I told the front desk I just needed to speak to financial aid for 5 minutes. That turned into 20. That turned into an hour-long conversation about scholarships, grants, and creative payment plans. And when I walked back to my car, I realized the systems only bend when you start pushing. That evening, I called Tina. "I'm ready," I said. "Tell me what you need from me." Her voice on the other end was calm but direct. "Everything you've got, because the role is real, and so are the expectations." "Good," I said. "I'm tired of shrinking." We set the first interview for the following week. On Sunday, I received a formal invite from Redmond HR to attend a mentorship review panel with Sloan and Gerald to evaluate progress and future responsibilities. I knew what it was: a trap, a chance to document me refusing to cooperate. I accepted with a smile. Because I was no longer cooperating, I was observing, preparing, watching the very machine that underestimated me grind itself into gears too sharp to ignore. Tuesday morning arrived like a quiet storm. I woke before the alarm, dressed in my navy slacks and that same blazer I wore to the promotion announcement months ago. The one with the stitched initials from my mother tucked inside the lapel. I tied my hair back neatly, clipped on the pearl earrings Maddie gave me for my 40th birthday, and packed only one thing in my work bag: an envelope, not thick, not flashy, just a white linen envelope with my name handwritten in fine black ink. No return address, no branding, just a quiet declaration of intention. The meeting was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. in Gerald's glass-walled office, the one with the view of the city skyline he always liked to point out during presentations, as if the buildings outside somehow validated the empire inside. When I arrived, Sloan was already there, legs crossed, tapping her phone on the arm of the leather chair like it owed her something. Gerald stood when I entered, doing that forced smile that never touched his eyes. "Evelyn, thank you for joining us. This will just be a quick touch base." I nodded, sat down, and placed the envelope on the table between us without a word. Sloan squinted at it like it was a bug. Gerald didn't touch it right away. "Before we get into whatever that is," he said, voice thick with dismissal, "I just want to thank you again for your guidance. Sloan's grown tremendously under your mentorship. Haven't you, sweetie?" She smiled, tight-lipped. "Definitely. Evelyn's been very patient with me." "Patient," I repeated softly, like I was testing the word. "That's one way to put it." Gerald's smile faltered. "Is there a problem?" "Not anymore," I said. "Go ahead, open it." He picked up the envelope, sliced it open with his branded letter opener, and unfolded the letter slowly. His face went from smug to confused, then to pale. Sloan leaned over to read. As her eyes skimmed the lines, she slowly stopped tapping. "You're resigning?" Gerald asked, voice rising. "Effective in 2 weeks," I confirmed. "Standard notice. Everything's documented, archived, and transferred to shared drives. I'll finalize client transition plans by next Friday." "You're leaving?" Sloan asked, incredulous. "Why now? Just because of the title?" I looked at her for a long moment. "No, not because of the title, because of the ceiling." "What ceiling?" Gerald asked, already agitated. "You've been valued here." "I've been used here," I said calmly. There's a difference. Gerald stood up, voice tightening. This isn't how professionals handle disappointment, Evelyn. You've built your reputation here. What are you going to do? Start over? No, I replied. I already started over. The day you handed my job to your daughter and called it mentorship. His jaw clenched. Where are you going? Somewhere that sees more than my compliance, I said, standing. Somewhere that values what I actually do, not just what I tolerate. I paused and let the silence hang. But don't worry, you'll feel it soon. And then I walked out. I didn't look back, not when I passed Connor's office with his blinds half closed, not when Marco glanced up from his desk and quickly looked away, not when HR waved at me in confusion from down the hall. I walked straight to my car, slid behind the wheel, and exhaled like I hadn't breathed in months. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A missed call from Gerald, a text from Sloan. I turned the phone off. That afternoon, I met Tina in a sleek corner office overlooking Haven Logistics Innovation Hub. She handed me my official offer letter. The title read, Director of Strategic Expansion. The salary was 35% higher. The benefits were better. The team was mine to build. But the best part? My first day would coincide with the Tri-State Industry Leadership Conference, an annual event Gerald had once bragged about hosting the keynote for. Now, it was Haven's turn. And Tina had a surprise. You'll be speaking, she said. Panel on Client Retention Strategy. Your name's already on the brochure. I blinked. You're serious? You earned it, she said. Besides, half the attendees know your name already. Some even asked if we poached you. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not bitter, not sharp, just free. The day of the conference, I wore a deep forest green pantsuit. No branding, no logos, just sharp lines, clean intention, and quiet elegance. As I stood behind the velvet curtain, waiting for my panel to be introduced, I scanned the audience from a side angle. And there they were, Gerald and Sloan, sitting 2 rows from the stage, wearing matching expressions of disbelief. Gerald's face had thinned, aged even in just the last month. Sloan looked nervous, glancing down at the agenda, probably hoping the names weren't real. But they were. I walked onto that stage and sat between 2 regional VPs from Fortune 500 companies. The moderator introduced me last. Evelyn Carter, Director of Strategic Expansion at Haven Logistics. She recently transitioned from Redmond Holdings, where she was instrumental in their Q2 growth surge. The applause was polite, but Gerald's expression was thunderous. The questions were easy. I answered from experience, real, earned experience. No fluff, no corporate nonsense, just strategy, empathy, and facts. When someone from the audience asked about employee retention, I paused, smiled faintly, and said, people don't leave jobs. They leave disrespect. And sometimes, they leave to remind you what you lost. I didn't look at Gerald when I said it. I didn't have to. After the panel, as the crowd thinned, a woman from Brighton Tools approached me. We've missed working with you, she said warmly. Our account went downhill after you left. I've been meaning to reach out. I'd love to reconnect, I said. And we shook hands. 3 weeks after the conference, the whispers turned into headlines, at least within industry circles. Redmond Holdings had lost 2 major contracts, Brighton Tools and Darwin Integrated, both longtime clients I had personally onboarded, nurtured, and retained through more challenges than I could count. The official reasons given were vague: service alignment issues, communication breakdowns, strategic divergence. But anyone who knew anything understood the truth. The glue had left the building, and without it, everything was starting to fall apart. Word reached me through unexpected channels. First, it was a LinkedIn message from Derek Shaw, Redmond's former CFO, now semi-retired, but still well-connected. Just saw your panel replay. Brilliant insights. Also, Gerald's been in meetings nonstop trying to plug the holes. Heard they're quietly offering buyouts to senior staff. Then it was a voicemail from Claire, an HR manager I barely spoke to during my time there, saying she was so sorry for how things played out and that a lot of us saw what happened, but didn't know how to stop it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Their apology wasn't mine to accept. The real surprise came on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I was in my new office, sleek, minimal, filled with soft light from floor to ceiling windows, and reviewing a pitch deck when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't saved. But I recognized it instantly. Gerald. I let it go to voicemail. He called again the next day, and the next. On the fourth attempt, I finally picked up. "Evelyn," he said, trying to sound casual, like we were still colleagues. "I didn't think you'd answer." "I almost didn't," I said flatly. "I've been reflecting," he continued, "about how things ended, about the decision with Sloan, about your departure. I think there were misunderstandings on both sides." I almost laughed. "Is that what you tell yourself?" "Look," he said, voice tightening, "I'm not calling to rehash anything. I'm calling because we're restructuring the leadership team. There may be an opportunity to bring you back at a higher level with broader autonomy. We're open to discussing a return." I paused. Let the silence stretch. "Gerald," I said calmly, "I didn't leave to make a point. I left because the point was already made. You just refused to see it." "Things are different now," he said. "You could help rebuild what we lost." "You didn't lose it," I replied. "You threw it away. And I've already rebuilt, just not with you." I hung up. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. It was just clarity. I had no need to punish him. He was doing that well enough on his own. That week, Tina called me into her office with a slight grin on her face. "You've made quite the impression," she said. "We've had 4 new inquiries from former Redmond clients. All of them mentioned your name. All of them asked for a meeting." "That's fast," I said. "It's not," she replied. "It's overdue." She paused. "We're expanding again. I'd like you to take point on building out a new subdivision: client renewal and retention. Build the team yourself. Pick the right people, ones who know the value of loyalty and precision." "Are you serious?" "Always," she said. "But I'll be blunt. We're moving quickly. I need a blueprint in a week." I nodded slowly. "I'll have it in 3 days." That night, I sat on the back porch with Maddie. She was in her old hoodie, legs curled under her, sipping tea like she was 70 instead of 17. "Did I tell you I'm applying for the creative writing scholarship?" she said, casually. "Even if I can't go this semester, I figure might as well try." "I think you should," I said. "Write what you know." "You mean betrayal, disappointment, and corporate sabotage," she joked. I laughed, full and real. "Or maybe a story about someone who walked through hell and kept her soul intact." She smiled at me. "I like your version better." Over the weekend, I drafted my first hiring proposal. I included two names I hadn't expected: Marco and Claire from HR. Both had reached out quietly in recent weeks. Both were worn down, unsure of their place, but still capable. I didn't hold grudges. I just held standards. And if they were willing to rise, I was willing to offer a hand. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about revenge. It was about building something better than what hurt you and giving others the chance to do the same. It didn't happen all at once, but slowly, the noise faded. The call stopped. The name Redmond Holdings became something I only heard in passing. Whispers from LinkedIn updates, background chatter at networking events, clients mentioning delays or how things just weren't the same over there. I didn't smile at the news. I didn't need to. Their fall wasn't my victory. My peace was. 6 months into my new role at Haven, I had a team of 11 under me. Diverse, hungry, brilliant minds. Some new, some from places I never thought I'd see again. Marco joined after quietly leaving Redmond during another round of restructuring. Claire came next, bringing with her the same calm efficiency she'd always had, only now with a fire in her belly I'd never seen before. I gave them freedom, but also boundaries. I gave them space to speak, but expected accountability. And more than anything, I made it clear from day one: your work will be seen, your name will be attached, and your seat at this table will be earned, but protected. I didn't talk much about what happened before. Not unless someone asked. When they did, I'd tell the truth. Not the dramatic version, but the one that matters. I gave everything to a place that only saw my usefulness, not my value. I stayed longer than I should have because I thought eventually effort earned equity. But sometimes you're just in the wrong room. The trick is knowing when to leave without looking back. One cool October afternoon, I found myself standing at a local high school auditorium, about to give a keynote for a Women in Business Youth mentorship event. The room smelled like old books and fresh carpet, and the students looked like younger versions of everyone I'd ever known. Bright-eyed, unsure, trying to decode the world before it hardened around them. Maddie sat in the front row, arms crossed but proud, with her laptop open and earbuds dangling from one ear. I opened with something simple. When I was your age, I thought being quiet meant being weak, that people would just see the work and reward it. But life doesn't work like that. It doesn't hand you a voice. You have to claim it. I told them about patience disguised as loyalty, about small decisions that slowly steal your power, about how your worth isn't defined by a title or a paycheck, but by how much of yourself you refuse to silence just to keep the peace. Afterward, a girl, no older than 16, walked up to me. "How did you know it was time to leave?" she asked. I paused. When staying started to feel like disappearing. Back at home that night, Maddie set down 2 mugs of hot cocoa on the kitchen table. The air smelled like cinnamon and worn pages. "You were great today," she said. "Thanks," I smiled. "You planning to quote me in your next essay?" "Already did," she teased. "Your disappearing line made it in." She looked at me for a long moment, more serious now. "You're different than you used to be." "How so?" "You used to come home tired in a way I couldn't explain. Now, even when you're busy, you seem full." I felt tears prickle behind my eyes, but I nodded. I think I finally stopped shrinking to fit rooms that weren't built for me. Later that evening, I walked into my small home office, now lined with books, leadership journals, and framed photos from conferences, project launches, and a team offsite I'd led in Chicago. In the corner, on a minimalist shelf, sat one single object, a white envelope, framed, the original resignation letter. Not because I wanted to remember the pain, but because that was the exact moment I reclaimed my power. My quiet declaration of worth. My proof that grace doesn't mean surrender. I used to think revenge would feel like triumph, but it doesn't. The real triumph is walking away without burning it all down and still watching the smoke rise behind you, knowing you built something better.